Hi everybody, my name is Ahalya Ganesh and I'm a student of TISS Hyderabad, that's Tata Institute of Social Sciences Hyderabad. And I'm turning 20 years old this year. And I say that because I wanted to remark on my last 20 years of existence. Because my talk today is basically going to be about violence. And while almost all of you are going to be familiar with the concept of violence per se, maybe some of you will be more familiar with it than you would like, right? And when I say gender-based violence, which is the focus of my research that I'm going to talk about, maybe some of you got images in your head, the lucky ones. Maybe you thought of rape or domestic violence. As you know, terms that you saw in the newspaper, or let's face it, on Facebook, on Scoop Whoop, on documentaries and anything on that spectrum really. And maybe some of you, irrespective of how many are watching or listening or wasting their time on Facebook right now watching me, some of you probably thought of personal experiences, of images where you were subjected to violence and maybe you have anger about it, maybe you have resentment, or maybe you're just numb to it now. But what I'm basically trying to say is that almost all of us have encountered violence in some way or the other. Some more personal than others, some more traumatic than others. But my topic for research came about because I myself was a survivor of violence. Why did I say what? I'm a survivor of violence. And so, growing up in my 19 years of existence, when I did do my research, I realized that violence is not some, in the corner where nobody accesses it sort of phenomenon. It's one that is all pervading in the sense that it's gotten into all of our lives in some way or the other, and it shapes our every movement, right? And so while considering the phenomenon, I was wondering how gender fits into it and how I fit into it personally and all of that. And being in a social sciences institution and being somebody who's interested in gender, I thought I should take up this initiative. So my paper that is hopefully going to be published soon is titled When Violence Manufactures More Violence, and it's a take on gender-based violence. And I'm going to talk to you today about my research questions, and the journey I took on as a researcher, and all the things that I found and learned and have now inculcated into my life, right? So before I go into the methodology and all of that, I'm going to first talk about the 3 research questions that I had. One was, is violence always visible? Now, when I said rape and maybe domestic violence, or since I said gender-based violence, probably you're thinking of women getting beaten up on the street or something like that. Are they the only kinds of violence that exist in our society? Or is there more than what meets the eye? Right? That was the first question that I had, because if you've noticed, most of the personal encounters we've had with violence deal with maybe violence where we just felt so uncomfortable by somebody's words, or maybe somebody's potential action scared us so much that we went out of our way to not encounter it. And we changed our routines and changed the way we talk or dress or any given thing, right? So that was the first question. The second question was, of course, the question of gender and how that fits into the discourse. And no, I don't mean violence against just women. And when I say women, I don't mean cisgendered women. I mean violence and how gender fits into the entire thing, but how violence against transgender people or non-binary people or agender people and so on and so forth. And I wanted to understand this because being in social sciences now, I understand that hierarchies are what constitute society almost. And when understanding a patriarchal social structure, such as what we have in India, gender has an hierarchy. And the second we're all cisgendered people, we've all occupied some sort of privilege there. And if you're cis male, you occupy more privilege than a cisgendered woman, and then you have all other genders, so that we don't make this into like a pure binary conversation that does not really help, right? And the third question that I had, and this is the crux of my research really, is about how the survivors of violence interact with the institutions that surround them and vice versa. And this is the focus of my research, mainly because all my life I have been told, and I know the people around me have been told, we're here for you, you know. We're here to take care of you. You don't need to go to anybody else. Everybody else is just like a passing cloud. But your family is always going to be here for you. Your friends are always going to be here for you. We're your rock, and so on and so forth. And I wondered if that's really true for violence, especially when, all things considered, we embody everything our family's worth is and family's honor is and all of that, right? And so here I'm going to be talking specifically about how bystanders, which I define as institutions and individuals who know about the violence, interact with the survivors, and whether or not they are a contributor or safe haven in the survivor's experience of violence, right? So, next thing I want to talk about was the methodology of research, because of course without that it wouldn't make sense at all, right? So I did some qualitative primary data work, and I did this through questionnaires and interview schedules that I constructed. And I'm going to tell you here that my sample is very small, and it's a very small scale research. One, because I could not capture more than 4 people who were willing to share their life with me and trust just some puny 19-year-old with their life story. But also because it was imperative to me that no detail gets diluted in the process of capturing more, maybe 100 people's data or whatever, right? And I did sampling in the sense that I did not do a representative sampling, and so there's no way my research can be used to theorize about something, because it does not represent the experiences of all women or all non-cis male gendered people. But what it does for me is capture the experiences of at least those 4 women. And I know that since I'm the researcher, I know some of my own biases and some of my own experiences also get captured, right? And what I wanted to do essentially was I wanted to allow violence to be defined by the survivor. Because what happens most often in our society is that we talk about violence in some narrow sense, and we say, you know, if you have these scars on these parts of your body, and if this and this has happened and this particular situation preceded one another, then it's violence. And I feel like we're pigeonholing the experience of the survivor, and that could be one of the reasons that the real experience of the survivor never gets echoed in the way that the media looks at violence, or anything of the sort, right? So I wanted to allow an open definition for my survivors, and so I went in with no operational definition of violence, but I did put one constraint, and that was that I only captured interpersonal violence and not structural or institutional violence. The nature of my sample, like I said, is just 4 people who identify as women. Of them, 3 are cisgendered women and 1 is a trans woman. Okay, now let's talk about the results, shall we? So one result that I got after collecting data was that I found that one definition given by Maitreyi Krishnaraj is the most apt definition for violence as I could find. And she defined violence in her 2007 paper as invisible, visible, camouflaged in moral terms, but the underlying power is the threat of penalties, of coercive power, of increasing the vulnerability of the victim in many subtle ways that deny the options or autonomy of her own being, right? And while this definition is complicated and full of jargon, what it basically highlights is that it can be anything, really. And the most important thing, however, is the struggle between they who are powerful and they who are not. And power does not necessarily have to be social or institutional, but power can be something that's very interpersonal and very, very micro, in the sense that it can just be about somebody changing somebody else's behavior through a potential action, right? And while talking about violence in this sense, right, so I'll I lost the slide, so I'm just going to go on anyway, right? And okay, so one of the things that I found out was that violence is somehow always a well-kept secret. And you may wonder, how are you saying this when you first talked about how all of us think about rape or domestic violence or anything of that sort? But it is a secret in that, like I said, you never get to hear the survivor's story in its entirety. We always jump to conclusions. We ask what she wore, what they were drinking, what they were doing out on the street, behaving like that, and stuff like that. And somehow it gets watered down and diluted in that we never really listen to the survivor and listen to their experience as such. So the first thing that somebody told me was that, you know, her experience with violence, and this was a woman who was a survivor of intimate partner domestic violence. She talked about how her experience was too commonplace for her to receive any help. In that, she said, I can't talk to my sisters about it, or neighbors, or friends, or other random relatives that we all know we have, because it meant that they would all be in the same position and none of them would be able to help each other. And that maybe in that process, her experience with violence will get belittled as not being too serious. I mean, she's not gravely injured or dying, so it's okay. And while that is problematic on so many levels, that is what is the truth right now. The second thing that they talked about was how they feared that them being open about the violence that they had encountered would cause hurt or inflict harm upon those who they deemed important to them, right? So their significant others. They feared that if they told their extended family that they were beaten or sexually assaulted or verbally abused or psychologically harmed by something that somebody did, then maybe that perpetrator or his or their confidants will somehow inflict more pain upon their family. And there was one particular incident that was narrated to me where my respondent said that her tormentors told her that if she told anybody about the violence that she faced at school, then her mother will be beaten and her father will be attacked on the street when he's walking. And so she never talked to anybody about the violence until she was much older. And that is one problem. The third one is that they feared that they'll never be taken seriously because they had seen others who had talked about the violence that they had faced and them not being taken seriously at all. And so vicarious experience led them to not talk about violence. And the fourth thing, this was the most, surprising thing for me, but then I guess it makes sense. It's that they feared that their perpetrator would be vilified. And here's where I need you to think about the social structure that we live in, right? We live in a society that does not allow us to define our own personhood by our individual personalities, achievements, interests, what have you. Instead, we talk about, oh, my family is a good family. My father is a doctor, banker, what have you. And we talk about ourselves in a collective person, right? And my respondents, who mainly here in this case, these were people who face either intimate partner violence or violence within the family, and they feared that the violence that they underwent was much too little for them to put their family's name, honor, and repute at risk. But also they feared that their perpetrator might be shamed for it, and because they were so closely attached to their perpetrator, they feared that they might be shamed for it also. And that's where this gets really messy, right? You can talk about the binary that, this person is assaulted and the person who is doing the assaulting will get shamed and this person gets help and goes scot-free, but that's not the easy situation. Nothing is black and white. Everything is in the gray, that the systems that we live in that violate us and inflict pain upon us are such that we are so entangled in them that to even complain about it would be a problem for us, right? That's the first thing. And then I'm going to talk about how I'd already told you that bystanders were people I defined as institutions or individuals who know about the violence. Now, knowing about the violence can be of two types again, right? Either the survivor confided in them or they found out in some way. So if your family or counseling center, then the survivor likely confided in you, or the family and um, neighbors and all the like found out about the violence. And how did they respond? Were they a safe haven? And here's the problem, right? We talk about a steady institution like family always giving us support, and some even say that they mold the adult personality and all of that. But how do they contribute to the violence? Do they help the person come out of it? Do they support them? Well, my hypothesis was that they don't, and my research said the same. Right? The survivors talked about how they were muted and said, "Oh, shh, don't talk about it, because if you talk about it, then we'll have to deal with so many little nitty-gritties that we don't want to deal with. We'll have to talk to that family member. We'll have to go and talk in your school, which is too much work for something that didn't even leave real scars, right?" And that's what we hear in society every day. We can be idealistic and say that no, we must accept everybody and all of that. And I mean, that would be ideal. Yeah, great, utopia. But no, our society is clearly not like that. They're terrible in that they tell you that your scars aren't real just because they can't inspect them and scrutinize them and see how you got them, right? The second thing that they saw was that their experience of violence was dismissed as not being violent enough, right? They were told sometimes that, oh, this happens to everybody. What is the big deal? And you just go through it and it molds you and it makes you a stronger person. And while I personally hate that statement, that's what you hear, right? You hear about how it makes you stronger and we must take it in our stride and all of that. The third thing was that they shame the survivor and talk about, who asked you to walk like that and talk like that, and because you did these things, you talk and walk like a girl and you just walk around in the streets when it's dark. What else did you expect? Like, that you somehow deserve the violence. I'll come back to this question in the end. But yeah, then in the last thing that they heard both from the family and from the counseling center was that their experience of violence was discounted. And I'm saying that in the sense that they were not believed and they were told that maybe you're making it up. What if you just read something or watched something and you suddenly put yourself in the character's place and now you're just dreaming of this violence that happened to you but never really happened to you. And this is especially problematic when it comes to child sexual abuse, because, well, the child is always wanting to be believed. And when you discount somebody's experience like that, it causes them more harm than you can possibly imagine, right? Their experience was discounted and they were told that they are dreaming it all up or imagining it, and maybe they should just forget about it like they have for so many years, even though what they had done was not forget it but repress it, right? And the last few things that I'm going to come to is that why is there silence about the violence? Right? So the first thing is about the status of the women in the family. And I'm saying women because again I'm going to deal with the binary. Yeah. So the problem is in our collectivist patriarchal structure, what we have in family is accorded so much importance, and so when it comes to your identity, or it all becomes conflated with the family's identity. And for some reason, inside some little treasure box marked by the keys of chastity and virginity and all of these things that women are supposed to uphold with all their life, lies the family honor. And suddenly, when you're violated through no fault of your own, because it's never your fault, the family honor is suddenly at risk of being exposed. Like, oh my God, just they're afraid of family honor getting lost, and then they blame the survivor for it because, why not inflict more violence upon the survivor of violence? But yeah, that's the problem with how survivors are treated, in that they, instead of being given solace, they're told to either shut up or just take it in their stride or seek help after they leave India, or anything on that spectrum really. And there's so much silence, maybe because all of our honor is somehow invested in the woman of the family who is undergoing violence. And so I'm going to leave you with two questions. What is deserving of violence anyway? Sometimes we say, and you hear this in society often, as, acha, she was like this, so then she maybe deserved the violence. Of course, if she didn't cook a meal, then she deserved to get beaten or something like that. But yeah, what is it that makes you deserving of violence, and how is that even possible? The second thing I want to ask is it violence if the perpetrator doesn't deem it to be? And this is the last thing that I'm going to say, so I'm just going to make it really short, or I'm going to try to anyway. So the thing is, in our structure, what we do is that we normalize some behaviors and others we say as warranting violence, right? And here, when you don't follow your role as a child or as an adolescent, if you go astray from that path just a little bit, they say you need to be punished in some way or the other to be brought back on track, and we've heard this back on track so many times. But here we also see that there are some roles and duties accorded to the fathers to, tell their daughters what to wear, or tell their wives what to cook, or tell them, well, anything on those lines. And when a husband, for example, imposes himself on the woman, in India it's not considered problematic, because why would it be? It's his role as a husband to push himself on the woman. If she doesn't like it, then too bad, really. And so here the perpetrator does not see themselves as being responsible for the violence, or that there has been a violent episode that has transpired, and the survivor doesn't get the space that he require, and society goes on as normal because nothing bad's happened at all. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you with those two questions, and since I can't see any of yours because I'm not logged in, I'm going to say bye. Thank you for listening to me and wasting your Sunday morning.